welcome everyone this afternoon. This should be a great time to discuss the bookmakers. And as Gary had mentioned, Peter Koch has joined us as well. And Peter is one of the I'll call him one of the stars in the documentary. I've only known Peter for just a few years, but I think he's going to have some great remarks to add to our discussion, and hopefully everyone is, going to participate this afternoon, and we'll all have a good time. So, Peter, maybe I could ask you just to, from your perspective, give us a little background on the bookmakers and kind of how the documentary came about, and a couple of the objectives of that documentary.
Okay. Well, I received a phone call from James and his father, and they paid us a visit and said that they had recently made a documentary, commercial, really, documentary, a paid-for documentary about the Arion Press in San Francisco. And in the process of making this film or video, they became intrigued by the sort of the greater community, and they were introduced to Neon McAvoy. If that name doesn't ring a bell with you, maybe you've heard of the Chronicle Books. Of course, that's one of his family enterprises. They also have McAvoy olive orchards and God knows what else. They're a very prominent Bay Area family. And Neon said that he would like to help them back a movie about the book. Now, I mean, and that's capital T, capital B. And it wasn't going to be about the bookmakers. It was going to be like a 90-minute Nova style documentary about the role of the book in contemporary culture, I guess. Anyway, as time went on, I came to have more and more influence over the young James, who was the filmmaker, and I kept introducing him to people and ideas about the creative side of making books by hand. And of course, as you noticed in the film, there were people who didn't make books by hand, but they were still bookmakers, or in some sense or another. But anyway, what happened really was that they kind of ran out of funding. And we at the Codex Foundation and in our studio and amongst our friends, so intrigued the young fellow, James, who was the filmmaker himself, that he just had run enough footage of us that he could put together a film called The Bookmakers. And it couldn't enlarge as far as he had hoped. That's kind of the origin.
Wow. Interesting. It's interesting. Well, it certainly touched on a whole number of book artists and, different ways to present the book. And I think one of the things that struck me about that was kind of listening to the printers. It's, working with the paper and the type and getting all of that to come together, the page layout, and just kind of all the details that go into creating that book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I would, I think that if I'm acting as a film critic, I would have begged for a little more lingering shots on the surface of the pages and on the making of the type and so forth, because that kind of deep craft pictorial knowledge is it's very seductive, and what we want from films, from what we at Codex wanted from this movie, and of course it wasn't ours, it was his, James, was that it would be a prompt to anyone who watched it to want to get their hands dirty, to get in on it, to do something with it, or if it was too late to get their hands dirty on that project, meaning making a book, at least come to Codex and buy one. And I think that after it went on to public television and was shown around the nation, Codex started to get these almost daily inquiries from people around the country, oh, I want to come to the next fair. Can I, do I have to apply for admission to come and see the fair? And, we'd say, no, you just pay $10 at the gate and you're in, yeah, it was the craft aspect of it is what's really the most seductive part. I wasn't certain how it was going to turn out, but that young the cinematographer, another James, his name is, you'll see on the credits, he was good, wasn't he?
He was very good.
Yeah. What did you think, Jenny, when you were watching that crazy guy making his book up in that giant complex of
right in Oakland? Yeah. Well, I thought the movie was super ambitious for a 1-hour film. It was talking about the idea of books, from a writer's perspective, and then it went to the craftspeople, but without any introduction whatsoever to what they were doing is actually old technology, and that's not actually how books are made, or the typical book that people would encounter. So I'm curious what the decision making was on their part to skip over all of that explanatory, this is a rare subset of bookmakers, and to group them in with the modern day writers and illustrators and that sort of thing that they put alongside the craftspeople and the book arts people that they featured.
Well, Jenny, it's an interesting thing you bring up, because really we are so fortunate as the craftspeople to have been added to the mix, which would normally have gone to people like, the Internet Archive, who, has such a big bang and a big effect on a global scale. And then, of course, that guy from McSweeney's, who is, the guy who writes books doesn't sell 1 million copies. Those people get attention. They get the attention, and the media is like only got so many hours for people that are involved in books in the first place. We're not cutting off people's heads. We're not, we're not storming the capitals of the nation. And, we're just quietly making books. I think we were extremely fortunate in getting a toehold there. And I want to say that I think a lot of the credit is due to Mark Sargianis, because I think Sargianis, who was sort of the star of the movie, the young man making that gigantic ham on rye book by, that crazy sort of B-grade author. I think that Mark, if you were noticing, the first time you see Mark in the film, in the movie, in the video, he's casting type at Arion Press. So that footage came from another movie, because by the time they were making this movie, Mark Sargianis had left Arion Press and he completed his apprenticeship and had opened his own studio. So they were kind of pasting in something from from a previous film. And Mark became this star, there he is, playing the wild guitar and drinking whiskey and, doing all that guy stuff, and A Ham on Rye is a guy's novel, if ever there was one. And there he was, he's such a sort of a quiet and almost self-effacing fellow. We were, and I think James, the filmmaker, was quite impressed. I think the people you can see that James were impressed by, because he's young. James is, by the way, the filmmaker is in his 20s. He's not all grown up yet. But his father was is a BBC filmmaker. With all full credit, and documentary maker. So James did a really good job, but it was kind of young, oriented towards the youth. I mean, I was particularly impressed when I saw the movie because I knew nothing about what he was putting together. It was with that young man in Sacramento who was making the children's book.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought,
Yeah.
boy, he was a star, wasn't he?
That was fabulous. You know, it was interesting. Mark had an interesting comment. You know, when he was operating one of the presses, he said, you know, there are no manuals when he was talking about just that whole process. But he did reference that there were, you know, other printers around that you could learn from. But, you know, it's just that it's one of those things where the knowledge needs to be passed on. There aren't these how-to books to go to because the machinery is old. It's not necessarily new equipment.
Right, right. Well, you know, the machinery is just machinery.
Right.
I mean, you can be a little more, you don't have to be reverential around it. I mean, a machine is it's a pretty simple thing to operate. To make it do exactly what you want, you just have to be precise because the machine is precise. Believe me, it doesn't do anything eccentric. It does exactly what it always does every time.
Right.
So you can't tune your machine, of course, then that's your fault. And that's where you need the apprenticeship if you can find it. And
Right.
yeah, we do need the older people to help us. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I relied on them. You know, I mean, and in Montana, I mean, let me tell you, it was a couple of thousand. It was 1,000 miles to the nearest master craftsman, and but there were these crazy printers, you know, who were living in their garages and putting out right-wing literature, you know, because as you know, Montana is full of the alt-right, and these guys were putting out their scurrilous magazines, you know, using letterpress equipment. And I could go to them, and it turned out some of them were damn good printers, and they could solve problems for me. I mean, they didn't want to hang out with me; they hated me. But still, from printer to printer, there were those moments, you know, when you realize as a printer, and you're talking to another printer, that I mean, there's a debt that you're always in debt to the people who helped you.
Right.
So the only way you can really pay it back is by helping someone else.
That's true. True.
Hmm. Well, I hope there's a filmmaker watching this. And I mean, there needs to be 2 or 3 sequels, don't you think, Jenny? I would have one. Which one would you have if you could have it?
Like who to follow?
Yeah. What would be the next installment in your life, in your mind?
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the succession of knowledge and stuff. It would be interesting to paint a family tree of some of these people. I thought the film was, even though there were some things from other parts of the country, I think most of these draw back to the Bay Area. Like most of these connections, it was pretty Bay Area centric for the most part.
Sure.
So articulating that more would be really interesting. Drawing connections between Russell, Moret, and you, and maybe telling the story of just how amazing it is over there in the Bay Area.
Yeah, isn't that something? I mean, we are certainly in a richness here. I mean, I moved from, you know, one of the most beautiful places on earth, in my opinion. I mean, in other words, I was, you know, sold on my hometown in Montana, but I had to move to the Bay Area because it was the center of the world as far as my profession, my chosen profession was concerned. And there would be no point in me at that time, you know, moving to Seattle and studying with Jenny. There was no Jenny there to study with. And New York City, there was nobody that I knew of. And Chicago had definitely bombed and gone to hell in a handbasket. And I mean, looking at the fine press tradition, the last remnants, you know, although there were plenty of them, were in California, as far as I was concerned. There were little groups in Connecticut, you know, and a kind of an academic crew in Iowa. Minneapolis hadn't begun yet. I mean, but yeah, there is a family tree. In certainly, I mean, my apprenticeship with Adrian Wilson learned to print, really interestingly enough, from William Everson, the poet, in a not a concentration camp, in a conscientious objectors camp in Oregon. So, but of course, Bill Everson learned to print Salinas, California, because his father was a craft printer, right? He was an itinerant printer. But anyway, Everson himself, revered the work of the Grabhorns, and the Grabhorns themselves revered the work of, and well, then the story leaves California, of course, and moves back to places like Chicago and New York. But from now on, as far as I can tell, the future is being much more dispersed, because now there's centers for the book arts in multiple cities, and I mean, that's all. I mean, if you can just get a hold of it, that's the thing to do. We also, at Codex, one of the things that we're trying to do the most is to promote what you would call the standards of the craft and the art. And so, so in that, in order to do that, we not only have our symposium and our book fair, but we also now have our journal called the Codex Papers. And the journal is available to anyone. It's just it's the price of a hamburger and a cup of coffee in Berkeley, $75 a year. And I'm sorry, a hamburger and a glass of wine, a good glass. And we're getting some really amazing stuff. I'm sorry I can't add to the mix Gerald Cloud, our editor, but Gerald is a terrific editor. He really brings strength. And does anybody? I mean, y'all, I hope, or will have heard of him. But if not, he worked in rare books, the special collections. He has a PhD in English, but then he has a library degree from somewhere. I think it's possibly Delaware, University of Delaware. Anyway, he then went on to work in special collections at Columbia University. He became he was head of the Clark Library in Los Angeles for a while, chief librarian at Clark. He then moved from the Clark. Where did he go? He went to James Cummins and started working as an antiquarian bookseller, one of the greatest bookselling companies in New York City. So he circled around from some of the best collections in the world as librarian at the Harry Ransom in Texas, and now he's an independent bookseller, and he lives in Petaluma, nearby. And so we get together often and talk about how. And anyway, we made him. We forced the editorship on him at Codex, and he took it graciously. And so the journal is now, we've completed, published 2 volumes, and the 3rd volume will be in press very shortly. The 4th volume is already quite getting full, and we're selling advertising. And for anybody who wants to take an advertisement, I mean, maybe the Book Club of Washington or Jenny Wilkinson, I don't know. Oh, listen, here's my wife, Susan, has joined us. She's freshly vaccinated, I hope.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, I just got vaccinated.
Yeah, this is
Excellent.
Yeah. So anyway, I was just chatting, and see, there's Jenny. Say hello to Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Here, take my chair.
Oh, nice to see you.
Well, I think one of the things we can do would be to send out something about Codex. I did not know very much about it until I saw this, but I'd heard it mentioned to me by, I think, Jane Carlin. You had mentioned Codex, at one of our board meetings, and so and I know Jody I know a lot of you know about it, but it was. I think we can send out something, let our members know more about that, and I would like to have seen that part of the documentary. If you're talking about a sequel, I think you could do a whole one on the next Codex, and do a survey of the people, the kind of materials that are there. It'd be fantastic.
it would have to be sort of ad hoc, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So bring your cell phones and start recording. You're going to have to work at that level. Right? I mean, that superior filmmaking. I mean, all the gear and all the knowledge that goes into making that video that you saw was incredible.
That was 4 or 5 years in the making.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years working on it. But you can tell it was well edited, right?
Yes, very well edited.
I would be really interested in hearing from some of the librarians that are on this call, just how much Codex like transformed the landscape of how you even get access to these international artists, and just how has your experience as a special collections librarian changed since Codex?
Silence.
Don't be shy.
Maybe it didn't change.
I'll say something. My name is Jane Carlin. I'm a librarian at a small liberal arts college here in the Pacific Northwest. And I am so gratified to see so many of my book artists, friends, and colleagues on this call. We're starting a collection here. It by no means rivals that of the University of Washington. But what I think Codex does is, yes, brings people together that you would never have been able to bring together before, which is that synergy. And I just want to compliment the filmmakers as well. As an educator, I think this is a film that will be so impactful for our students in introductory English classes, history of communication, bookmaking classes. We have a makerspace in our library now, and students are really interested now in book and paper arts. And thanks to Jessica Spring and other printers in the area, we now have a restored 19th century hand press in our space. And Jenny, you've been great with providing examples of printing. So I think the film can really serve as a basis and foundation for encouraging a younger generation of book makers and designers. And I would just love to have that filmmaker come up to the Pacific Northwest and spend a few years with us making a documentary.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues, of course, that's challenging smaller libraries or those establishing collections is that the affordability of many of these books are beyond the capacity of smaller libraries. So something we've really been thinking about in our community is ways to create more access to books, and the way that artists make editions or create their books is really something to think about. And sometimes I feel Codex is reaching beyond the reduced budgets of some libraries, but still.
Anything you can interrupt.
Right.
Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, no, there are many very affordable books at Codex. Yes, they're very expensive ones, but there's some, you could get some excellent things that, are between, let's just say $40 and $200. You can get really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're not all $10,000.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that there was in the film there was a collector who had a foreign accent but spoke excellent English.
Yes.
Okay. So he's from South Africa, and he do you remember his remark? His remark was that he'd bought so many books, and they were all like, it sounded like they were very, very reasonably priced.
Right.
But then he'd found one book that he couldn't resist. It was, I don't know, whatever it was, $5,000, and it sort of blew his budget. But he had to have it, So yeah, you can find a $20 or $25 book or a.
Yeah, young collectors can start something.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be, really, really expensive or top of the line.
Well, clearly the money is involved is in getting down here and getting your hotel room and in dining at Chez Panisse, right? Which, of course, if you're down here, you may as well. I mean, really, on Monday night at Codex, Chez Panisse is like total Codex. I mean, both floors are full of people we know. Booked a year in advance.
That's true.
Yeah.
There was a comment earlier about you don't have to be, all you have to do is pay $10 to go to Codex,
Right.
but to be an exhibitor or a seller at Codex, Is that juried?
Actually, yes. But it's juried quietly and unknown. We don't advertise that it's juried because we don't want to seem to be professionally elite, I guess this would be the word.
Well, they have to, at this point, it's so many people want to come. There has to be a cutoff. So if you've been, then you're in.
Usually.
And then we have to see their work. They have to submit work to be able to be a first-time exhibitor, because we do want to keep the quality very high. And also some people really just don't fit. I mean, they could be sometimes commercial publishers want to get in, or people that make facsimiles that just doesn't fit into our,
Or remit.
It doesn't. So we have to sort of weed those people. And some people, quite frankly, just aren't good enough. They just, so we have to have some kind of criteria to say, because we can't have everyone can't come. We just can't be that big.
One of my favorite persons that I had to say no to, although I have nothing against him, the guy who makes furniture out of books. And I thought, no, I mean, going to the junkyard and buying up, for nothing, a pickup load of books and then gluing them together and making chairs and bookshelves out of them. No, we don't have room. But, but if you want to set up a stand in a tent in the parking lot, go right ahead.
Right.
Yeah. Has anybody there been to the Gutenberg, the Frankfurt Book Fair? Jenny, have you been to Frankfurt? Okay, well, one of the things that you'll find amazing if you get there is that between the 5 or 6, 4 to 5-story buildings that the fair occupies, there's a giant square the size of, the biggest square in a major city. And in there were people who were making book sculptures. Carving things that look like books out of soapstone and wood, and they're selling them, and people are buying them and dragging them home to their personal libraries. I mean, if they weren't so heavy, I'd have one. Yeah. Anyway,
anybody that's been to Codex, I don't know what you all were discussing, is that it's a lot of fun, and you're going to see anybody in the book arts world, librarians or makers, or you're going to see somebody and it's or somebody that you want to know, that you've heard about, somebody that comes from Russia, or somebody that comes from China or whatever, and every one of them is behind their desk explaining their work. So you have this direct access, to for $10 of walking in the door, talking to any of these people that'll be happy to show their books. And there's so much more behind it than just what just seeing a photograph. And it's a great it's like a party. I mean, it's a great vibe. It's fun. I mean, we wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. It's work, but it's fun.
Is our video working, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, you guys look great.
I remember when I went to my first Codex in the Bay Area, you're absolutely right. The energy level is extremely high, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think the other thing that I really enjoyed was, each of the artists or bookmakers, they're more than willing to share how the book was made, what went into it, the story behind it. And, it was just, from that perspective, it was just a real sharing of knowledge. And I didn't feel like, it was not intimidating.
I think that's the vibe.
Yeah, that's right. Non-intimidating. Thank you. That's what we wanted. We try very hard to create, a warm and friendly atmosphere, and what Susan is the absolute mistress, I suppose you would call her, or the master of the, of the social side. I mean, she's insisted on the quality of the food that we that we serve, the restaurant that's open inside this thing. What's the menu going to be at the gala dinner afterwards? That gala dinner is something to behold. I mean, how many people come? A couple of hundred?
Yeah, like three. Yes, like no. Let's see, 270 or something like that.
270 people in
Right.
this room having dinner, and they're all drunk.
Wait a minute, it's an open bar. Codex.
Open bar. Did you hear that?
Codex.
Open. I mean, so you should see these guys gals flocking to these bars and just, I mean, ordering champagne.
That's not on the list, but some people
Some
did.
people, yeah, a couple of
We got
people
stuck with
were clever and just said, "Oh, by the way, this scotch isn't good enough. What do you have under the table?" And they had to bring it out because we had told the concierges that this is open bar. They certainly didn't mind charging us for that upper level booze. But anyway,
when we started Codex, we gone to a symposium and book fair at Wellesley, and they had the symposium, they had the fair, and then afterwards they had like a cocktail party, and I thought that's the perfect model.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our symposium. Everybody that buys a table, every exhibitor gets a ticket to the symposium, and we don't have the fair and the symposium at the same time, so people can go. So we have the didactic, and we have the marketplace where people can sell, and then we have the social. So we've put in lots of time where people people can see each other, they can have dinner together. There's all kinds of book related meetings around that week of Codex, the Bookbinders of America, and then this and that. And then there's exhibits in San Francisco. People are going into town and seeing these, I don't care where it is in San Francisco, they're going. So a lot of coordinated, or semi-coordinated activities happen around it. So that's what we really wanted to have, this a bibliophilic week. And that's why we put ourselves right up against the antiquarians, because if there's curators like Mark Dimunation that has to come to town, they just go to both. So
Right.
There's and a lot of people then also people that want to see both fairs. So they go first to Codex and then they go to the other, so they can see everything. So it's got a real synergy for the Bay Area of that week. We call it what do we call it?
Book
Rare.
Week.
Oh yeah, we call it Rare Book West.
A Book Week West. Yeah, Rare Book Week West, I think.
Rare
yeah.
Book Week West. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we've been able to do that. So and we work with all the groups around the Kapelavine Club, the Book Club of California, the Center for the Book Arts, the San Francisco Public Library. So they all do events around Codex and the antiquarians.
Yeah, and at the next Codex, it's pretty likely that our mega exhibition. We've been working for 4 or 5 years now on an exhibition and catalog called Materialia Lumina, and it's what we call the Codex 75. So it's the 75. It is a curated list of 75 of the greatest books, we think, that have been exhibited at Codex for the last 20 years or 15 years, and that are in the collections of Stanford University. They have to be in there because it's a Stanford exhibition, and they are exhibiting their own material, not borrowed material or loaned material. Right. And so the editor of the journal is Paul van Kapelavine, who is not the journal, of the catalog. Paul is head of the Rare Books and Special Collections Division of the National Library of the Netherlands. And he has created 2 or 3 brilliant catalogs, really brilliant. I have them on the wall here next to me. I can't show them to you without jumping out of the picture, but Artists and Others is the title of one of his catalogs. That is just one of the more brilliantly put together catalogs. Anyway, Paul is editing it. It's being designed by his designer in the Netherlands. And the exhibition will open in Stanford right before Codex 22, and then the exhibition is also going to be at the Klingspoor Museum in Offenbach, Germany.
This spring.
It's this spring. It's going to open in March at the Klingspor, and it's going to open at someday, 22, I guess,
Or 23.
or 3 at the Boston Athenaeum. And if you have a major venue that can handle these rare books, we'd be happy to see them in your city. It's going to be an unbelievable exhibition because there are 75 books by some of the greatest living book artists. And like I say, it's very, very curated. You'll see it has a very Codexian flavor since they're all part of us, part of our gang. But some of the finest writers in the world are writing the article and describing the books. I mean, there Suzanne Padberg in Germany, and Paul van Kapelavine in the Netherlands, and Ruth Rogers at Wellesley, and Mark Dimunation at the Library of Congress, and it's a long list of the writers. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a real contribution to the field. So that too goes on during mm-hmm. Codex. Mm-hmm. Yay.
Right. Yeah, and for an exhibit, for example, Stanford cannot show all 75 books because they don't have that many cases, but we're hoping that in the different venues, they'll be showing different books. Yeah. So yeah. I guess what we're saying is that if a smaller library had room, they could do a smaller mm-hmm. show.
But the catalog, of course,
yeah, because you could have
it all.
Right. If they could, right. They might have some of those books in their collection.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Then they could borrow.
Oh, yeah.
Also borrow. We have.
Oh, no. The University of Washington, I'm certain, has a probably a fairly good portion of the books that are going to be in this exhibition. I mean, hasn't your curator there at UW been to almost every codex? I think she has.
Probably.
Sure, Sandra has. She's got Julie Chen's got all of Julie Chen's works, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when is Codex 2022 scheduled? Is that looking at February of 2022? We are going to, I think, in February, book the venues, and hoping that we can have it at the same time as we usually do, which would be the beginning of February next year. Right.
And what we did this year, and we'll probably do next year, is we booked 2 dates. We had February and we had May, hoping things were going to be better by May, but of course they weren't. But
well, they aren't yet.
Well, that was last year.
Yeah, but anyway. Soon.
Yeah. Oh, this year. Yeah, it was happening.
Codex would be happening next week. Oh, it's terrible.
I know. We're getting letters from people all over the world saying, "Oh, we miss everybody," because everyone looks so forward to this every 2 years, and now it's going to be 3.
That's right. You saw in the film, didn't you? The bookbinder. Help me, my mind is slipping. Jenny, what's his name?
The bookbinder, Hain?
No, the guy, the bookbinder.
I mean the movie.
No. Our friend. Excuse me. Anyway, I'm sorry.
John DeMerit.
John DeMerit. John was saying, that every year, the 6 months before Codex, he's just way too busy. Because everybody's trying to get their books bound, in time for the exhibition. And he says, no, I've been telling people they can't do this to me. You can't, but I have to, and I do, he says. Yeah.
I love the little detail in the film. And it shows you setting up your own table, Peter, and slamming your lead book down. Bam, you can hear it.
I don't have to slam it if I let go of it. It's a huge noise.
You could hear it, and it made me laugh.
That's funny. Yeah, it weighs 30 pounds, guys.
I had to carry that once. We were in Provo, Utah, going to the library. Peter thought he was parking right in front, but he wasn't. It was like 8 blocks away. And I said, well, I'll carry it, because he couldn't carry it. Well, then I got halfway there. I said, I can't carry it anymore. And this very big strapping Mormon boy said, can I help you, ma'am? And I said, oh, yes. Well, could you help me carry this book? Of course, little did he know it weighed 30 pounds. But he did.
Yeah, like a good fellow. He carried it.
He did. Yeah, it's a heavy book.
How long did it take Peter to produce that book?
Oh, a couple of years.
Well,
a couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years. We're still binding it. It takes about, in terms of studio time, it takes about 4 months to produce a single copy. It does. I mean, it's not 4 months or 8 hours a day, but you understand. But it's about a 4 month long process, and so we've bound 18 of the edition of 25 now, and we sold them all of the 18 that are bound, except for one. So we have one for sale. Finally, it's been a year since we've had one bound. A long time. I mean, each page is soldered,
Right.
by hand, and then the binding is a very long process of weaving, and then of course the box making takes place in John DeMerit's studio, and then the patinaing of the copper cover is made in like Christopher Steinauer does it, and I mean on and on.
And just to make the pages, I mean, just the experimenting to get the images to stick.
Oh yeah, that took us forever to figure out how to get a photograph printed from an inkjet, a laser jet printer, a big industrial strength printer. It's a flatbed printer, and the printer is made for like signage, outdoor signage. So it can print. It's a flatbed laser printer that can print an area about the size of a king size bed.
Wow.
So you can imagine if you're doing a what do you call it, a billboard. It takes about 6 of those king size
Right.
beds to make a big billboard. But they print right directly onto plywood. You have a leeway in the on the printing nozzle of about, I'm going to guess it's about 1/4 of an inch, or no, 1/2 an inch. You can raise it up to a 1/2 inch, so you can print on 1/4 inch ply, and then they take the 1/4 inch ply, of course, and whatever they do, nail it to something. But we're bringing in these sheets of lead and laying them on the bed of the flatbed, and then they were printed. But in order to get it to adhere, because lead is of course flexible, and then of course these acrylic images, acrylic inkjet, would just pop right off. Just boom, they're gone.
Wow.
So what we discovered is there's this truly obnoxious chemical that is used, and you need a gas mask to use it, and they deliver it to you in an armored truck almost, and what it is an undercoating for ships. So if you're going to actually paint the side of your 2 zillion square yards of ocean liner that's going to be underwater, saltwater, you need to buy this protective undercoating and apply it at the hazard of your life. And you can buy this stuff in quart cans, believe it or not. And they do deliver it to your door when you don't need a license. It's almost nuclear, I'm telling you.
Wow.
Anyway, we learned about it, and it was, believe it or not, it is made on the premises of an old lead mine. And of course, here I am, painting it on lead. It was mined, and it's about mining, and of course, and the terrible news that
it has all the different metals in it.
Yeah, of course, it has all the metals in it. It has
Lead,
gold, copper, lead, silver, tin. Well, not tin.
What's in the soldering?
Yeah, that's right, tin solder. Yeah. So we made it of what it is about, and it does indeed weigh 30 pounds.
Little subtle irony there.
Yeah, not so subtle, huh?
Right.
In your face, yes, I know.
Right.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys would like to see more movies like that, but I think it's time probably to begin thinking about producing small movies. Like you said, you push the record button on this. Okay, well, if you go to our website called Extraction, Art on the Edge of the Abyss, the Extraction website that's attached to Codex website, and the Extraction website, when you open, it says enter. Once you find it on your computer, it says enter the site. Well, within almost as you begin scrolling, there's a movie that you can watch. It's about it. Okay, and what you should know about this is that movie was shot with an iPhone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and an iPhone and a scanner, a computer scanner, for the images. So it's kind of a Ken Burns-like production, meaning that you see a lot of images of the books that were, of the things that we're talking about, the artwork, and also the photographs and so forth, and you're moving around in them. But there are these headshots where I'm talking and other people. You know, those were shot on an iPhone.
Oh, be darned.
And then edited.
And Sam edited them. Now we have this young man working for Codex for the last couple of years, Sam Peltz, and he just, I mean, he trapped me. I invited him over right here to give us a practice run through of how we might possibly record something about the extraction intervention that we were doing. And he popped his cell phone out of his pocket and started filming, and he didn't give me a second chance. He just used it. So it's very spontaneous, but it works. It works. So we should be making more.
Maybe we could just make a few little video shorts for Codex.
Yeah, we've been talking about at the
trying
last
to do it ourselves.
Codex board meeting. We talked about producing some virtual content, and it would and that might be seminars that we could. But we'd have to sell the seminars. I mean, in other words, you have to pay to attend, because that's the point, is that we need to bring some revenue into the foundation in order to continue to support the publishing end of our program. The publishing costs money; it loses money. Let's put it that way. But the rest of it is it's not endangered. The book fair and the symposium, they support themselves. With gifts, with the kind of faithful following that we have. Yeah. Well, anyway, if there's anybody got a question about the movie, you should ask it now before I fade.
That's right. Others with questions, comments?
Want to see my kitty?
Hey.
I don't have a question, but I have forwarded that link to so many people who are curious about the kind of work that I do. And they, of course, have more questions because I live in Denver. Nobody knows about this kind of work here. And it's a lot funner way to answer that question. Just a small part of what book arts can encompass. But there's other things that are enticing to people. The Craft in America series has had a couple of book artists on there, but it's quite a hodgepodge, and this hour-long documentary is succinct. It is frustrating in the way that I think Jenny mentioned, that some of the images, or maybe you, Peter, mentioned some of the images are not held very long, but for many people that wouldn't be a benefit. The benefit is the overview. So thank you for getting that done.
Well, thank James for having it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I think he wanted it to be longer. He wanted it to be for about 2 hours, but I think they ran out of money for the documentary. They had to raise so much money, and so that's why it was shorter than we would have liked it to be. They wanted it to be in movie theaters too. It's supposed to be in a film festival.
It's going to be and it will be shown in film festivals around. James is exceedingly well connected, possibly through his father, who is, a very accomplished BBC producer and director. And so we have hope that it'll keep. In fact, he hasn't got European distribution yet. He's working on that. That's so I have a link that I am a secret link that I'm able to share. But it's not supposed to go viral. In other words,
say though.
But he told me that if I wanted to send it to anybody in Europe who wanted to see it, that I should just go ahead and do it. So I would ask you all, if you have a European correspondent that you would like to show the movie to send me an email, and I will send you the link. I'd be happy to do it. And it's just, it's very simple. All you need is the code, right? And I can give it to you, and then you can watch it on your television. on your computer anytime you like. So that's something to know.
So I'm curious, out of the participants in Codex, how many are international? What percent are international versus, call it domestic, US?
I'd say it's probably close to 35%, maybe almost as high as It's not as high as 40. Our largest contingent of international tables has previously been Mexico, but have now been overtaken by France. The word spreads. The Mexicans were coming because we did Codex Mexico, and we went down and we had an exhibition in Mexico City that traveled all over the country. It went to 3 or 4 museums, and then we had that same exhibition travel to the Mexican embassy in Washington D.C. And now we're talking about doing a Codex France.
Right, because we did things that kind of sound what we did. China, was it China? Yeah, China. We didn't do it on purpose. It just sort of happened that way. Then we did a concert. We didn't call it Codex Mexico, but it concentrated on artists coming from Mexico.
Plus we went to Mexico.
And then the Norwegians, not Norwegians,
the Scandinavians, Codex Nordica.
The Nordic countries organized themselves. They didn't even know each other, all those people.
Yeah, interesting. They didn't know each other. And suddenly this woman, Amy Malfa, starts to organize, and then she starts meeting people in Denmark and Finland.
Right, which now they call themselves that. They're a group, and they have meetings and communicate, but they hadn't been in communication previously.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking about who's the next biggest group that we have at Codex, which is France.
Yeah.
So we might have to do some, board retreat there first.
Oh yes. The perks.
There you go.
Well,
But
I can imagine that Codex is something that the foundation could make steps to duplicate in other countries too, eventually, because you guys won't want to be leading it forever. And, if you put something in place,
yeah.
that, if it.
Well, that happened, and Jenny, I don't know if you noticed, but that for a while there was a Codex Australia, and then they became later the Codex the Antipodes, because they wanted to include New Zealand. Yeah. They wanted to include New Zealand, and they had their own fair, and now they have their own website, and now Codex Mexico has its own website, and you can find these, and they're kind of springing up. The fact that the fair itself, that is the bringing together of all the nations in one place, I'm hesitant to try to duplicate that elsewhere. The truth is that it's a single destination like San Francisco works. You can get people from the Pacific Rim, which is rather large, and it's a bit of a stretch for the Europeans. They whine and complain a bit. They say, well, it would be nice if we had this in New York City, which is just a couple hours away instead of the whole other side of the world. Still in all, I think that Codex will outlive our care. There's a line of transmission at work already, so I can't announce it publicly yet, but I will be retiring in a year or so.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, it would be hard to do. Being on the ground here is what makes it work. It's hard to try to organize something from here in Paris or somewhere else. Somebody else has to do the work. And they have many fairs in Europe, all over the place. So they don't need us there. We need us here. And they're very happy to come here. And they all say that they sell more books here than anywhere else. This is the market right here. So because they have the American curators will buy American curators will buy a French book, a book in French, whereas a French library might not necessarily buy a book in English. So
unless a French.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
interesting.
We are the market. They said if we didn't have Codex, we wouldn't sell half the books that we have. So our universities too. We have like the different departments that want
That's right. That's right. We had 9 curators from Stanford alone at the last Codex, and of course we know that some of them came from like the German department. and who knows what else. I'm just guessing.
The French
The French
department,
department
yeah.
probably comes, and
The
Latin American curator comes every time,
Also
and they're
from the
buying
bank.
separately, from
Right.
Roberto Trujillo, who's head of special
And the
collections.
Bancroft, and University of California, they have many different libraries buying different things, like the design library buys certain
That's
things.
true. That's true.
The Bancroft buys certain
Yeah,
things.
Jenny, your alma mater, the Environmental Design Library, is they're buying. And I'm sure that if you have any work that you would like to sell them, that they might be interested, because they certainly, your colleague, Jonathan Gherkin, who also graduated in the same program, has
Sold his book.
his master's thesis to the library. I wish we just had more access to the young people. That's all I could say. We would like the salon atmosphere, we've achieved it, at a sort of a mega level, but at the more intimate level, that is, I don't really, we have room in my studio for more apprentices. Let's put it that way. We just don't have them, but they come and they go. We have some people now working. I mean, we have basically a staff almost full time, of 3 now, and they're all young people that started with me. They didn't come in with their knowledge from elsewhere. All right, well, that is probably enough for now. If you guys want to call it a day, I'm up for it.
Thank you very much. No, this has been wonderful.
I wanted to say one thing about the Codex that makes it different from, say, an antiquarian book fair, is that each time you come, you're going to see a lot of stuff completely different. I mean, it's new stuff that's coming out from all of these artists. And so I can see the excitement level that would be there. Not to say that the antiquarian book fairs, you're not going to find stuff that you haven't seen before, but it is certainly a different sense that you have, and a different opportunity to see things that are really new and creative. We have a very good museum here in Seattle, the Bainbridge Island Art Museum, or Bainbridge Art Museum, that has a wonderful collection that Cynthia Buxton Sears has essentially donated, created a wonderful room. And the book club had a nice excursion over there a couple of years ago with lunch, and it was great to hear her talk about her collection, and she's still collecting, she says. So there we go.
She came to the last Codex.
I'm not surprised. I'm sure she's terrific. Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody. Now, I may, as just because I'm always trying to build membership for the book club, I may send out an email inviting those people who are not members to consider joining the book club, because we have among our normal members are book collectors, book dealers, librarians, and people involved in the book arts. And so, and we really do, the book arts seems to, we have several programs a year in that. We're delighted to have the Book Arts Guild members here today, whether you, it's been, it was, I want to again thank Rue for suggesting this, and thank Peter and Susan for really providing such interesting background on this documentary.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great.
Thanks again, Peter and Susan.
Bye. Jenny. Bye, Jenny. Nice to see you.
Oh.